Arrayed deep in the heart of a crime-infested city, a towering apartment block stands like a fortress of chaos. Inside, every floor is ruled by fear, violence, and loyalty to one ruthless crime lord. At dawn, a special police unit is sent on a dangerous mission: infiltrate the building, capture the kingpin, and escape before anyone notices. Among them is Rama, a young officer carrying not just a weapon but a quiet determination. As the team moves upward, the silence breaks into a storm of brutality. Their presence is discovered, and suddenly the building transforms into a deadly trap. Doors slam shut, lights flicker, and enemies emerge from every shadow. With no backup and no way out, the officers are forced to fight their way through narrow hallways and blood-stained rooms. Every step forward costs them something: strength, Ollie's, hope. Rama, separated from his team, must rely on instinct, courage, and raw fighting skill to survive. The deeper he goes, the more he realizes that this mission is more personal than he ever imagined. Secrets unfold, loyalties are tested, and survival becomes the only goal. The raid is not just a story of action, it is a relentless journey through fear, sacrifice, and the will to endure against impossible odds. The deeper Rama ventures into the building, the more the line between duty and survival begins to blur. The once structured mission has now collapsed into pure chaos. Gunfire echoes endlessly through concrete walls, mixing with the sounds of footsteps, screams, and breaking glass. Each floor feels like a different battlefield, controlled by desperate criminals who know there is no escape and therefore nothing left to lose. Rama moves carefully, his breathing steady but his mind racing. Every corner could hide an enemy. Every shadow could mean death. Yet, what drives him forward is not just his role as a police officer, but something far more personal, something buried in his past that connects him to this very building. As he fights his way upward, the encounters grow more intense and more brutal. The enemies are no longer just faceless criminals. They are skilled fighters, each one testing Rama's endurance and spirit. In tight corridors and dimly lit rooms, every movement matters. The fights are raw, fast, and unforgiving. No wasted motion, no second chances. At one point, Rama forms an uneasy alliance with another survivor. Trust becomes a fragile concept in a place where betrayal can happen in an instant. Together, they navigate the deadly maze, sharing brief moments of strategy and silence before the next web of violence crashes in. Meanwhile, at the top of the building, the crime lord watches everything unfold. Calm, calculating, and utterly merciless, he controls the chase like a puppet master. Through speakers and informants, he turns the residents into hunters, promising freedom to anyone who can eliminate the intruders. The building itself becomes alive with hostility, every resident a potential threat. As Rama gets closer to the truth, shocking revelations begin to surface. Loyalties shift. Hidden relationships are exposed. What once seemed like a simple mission reveals layers of corruption and personal conflict that cut deeper than any weapon. In the final stretch, exhaustion weighs heavily on Rama's body, but his resolve remains unbroken. Bloodied, bruised, and pushed beyond his limits, he faces enemies stronger than ever before. The fights are no longer just about survival, they are about confronting the truth and deciding what kind of man he will be when it's all over. The raid delivers an intense, unrelenting experience where action is not just spectacle, but a language of survival. It's a story of courage under pressure, of sacrifice in the face of overwhelming odds, and of one man's journey through a living nightmare where every second counts. The time Rama reaches the upper levels, the building no longer feels like a physical place, it feels like a living entity, breathing violence through every corridor. The air is thick with smoke and tension. Bodies lie scattered as silent witnesses to the chase that has unfolded. Every step forward is heavier, not just from exhaustion, but from the weight of everything he has seen and lost. Rama is no longer just a member of a failed operation, he has become something else entirely. A survivor, a fighter shaped by necessity. His movements are sharper now, more instinctive. Pain no longer slows him down, it fuels him. Yet beneath that hardened exterior, there is still a man trying to hold on to his purpose. As he closes in on the top floor, the resistance becomes more organized, more desperate. The remaining enemies are not just fighting to win, they are fighting because they have nothing left. Each confrontation feels like a final stand. The narrow hallways turn into arenas where strength, speed, and willpower collide in brutal silence. Then comes the moment of truth. Rama finally faces the inner circle of the crime empire, the most dangerous men in the building. Among them is a figure from his past, someone whose presence shakes him to his core. This is no longer just a mission. It is a collision between duty and blood, between justice and loyalty. The emotional weight of this encounter is just as intense as the physical battle that follows. The fight is relentless, close, violent, and deeply personal. Every strike carries meaning. Every pause is filled with unspoken conflict. It is here that Rama must make a choice, follow orders blindly, or confront the truth that has been hidden from him. At the very top waits the mastermind, the man who turned this building into a kingdom of fear. Calm and calculating, he represents everything that has gone wrong. The final confrontation is not just about power, but control. Who holds it, and who is willing to take it back? When the dust finally settles, victory does not feel triumphant. It feels heavy. The cost has been too high. Lives have been lost, trust has been broken, and the truth has left scars that cannot be erased. As Rama walks out of the building, the morning light feels different, almost unreal. The outside world continues as if nothing happened, but for him, everything has changed. He carries with him not just the memory of violence, but the realization that the battle between right and wrong is far more complicated than he once believed. The raid ends not with celebration, but with reflection. It is a story about survival in its rawest form, about a man pushed beyond his limits, forced to confront not only enemies around him, but also the truths within himself. And while he may have escaped the building, the impact of that night will follow him long after the fight is over. The city outside continues to breathe as if nothing ever happened. Traffic moves, people talk, life goes on. Unaware that inside a single building, a war unfolded before sunrise. But for Rama, the silence after the chase is louder than any gunfire. Walking away from the building is not an escape, it is a transition. Every step feels unfamiliar, as if he has crossed an invisible line between who he was and who he has become. His body carries the marks of battle, but the deeper wounds are the ones no one can see. The mission was supposed to be clear: enter, eliminate, and leave. Yet what Rama experienced inside shattered that simplicity. He witnessed not only brutality, but also the fragile nature of loyalty, the corruption hidden beneath authority, and the human cost of decisions made far above him. As he reflects, questions begin to surface. Who was truly in control? Was justice actually served? Or was he just a small piece in a much larger, darker system? The people he fought were not all the same. Some were ruthless, others were desperate, trapped in a world where violence was the only language they knew. This realization lingers with Rama, forcing him to see the conflict in shades of gray rather than black and white. Beyond the physical battles, there was a deeper struggle on that tested his identity. Inside the building, survival demanded instinct over morality. Every decision had consequences, and hesitation could mean death. Now, outside of it, Rama must reconcile those choices with the man he believes himself to be. Beyond the physical battles, there was a deeper struggle on that tested his identity. Inside the building, survival demanded instinct over morality. Every decision had consequences, and hesitation could mean death. Now, outside of it, Rama must reconcile those choices with the man he believes himself to be. The experience changes how he sees everything. Trust becomes fragile, authority becomes questionable, justice becomes complicated. And yet, despite everything, there is something that remains unbroken: his will to keep going, not because he is untouched by what happened, but because he refuses to let it define him completely. The building may stand behind him, but symbolically it never really leaves. It becomes a reminder of fear, of strength, and of the thin line between order and chaos. In the end, The raid is more than a story about action. It is about what happens after the fight, about the silence that follows violence, about a man who survives not just by defeating his enemies, but by facing the truth of what he has endured. And as Rama disappears into the waking city, one thing is certain: the battle may be over, but the story is far from finished. Time moves forward, but for Rama, the echoes of that night never truly fade. The building may now be just another structure in the city's island, empty, almost forgotten, but its shadow stretches far beyond its walls. What happened inside was not an isolated incident. It was only a glimpse into a much larger network of power, corruption, and control. Rama begins to understand that the mission was never just about taking down one crime lord. It was about exposing a system that thrives in secrecy, protected by fear and silence. The deeper truth is unsettling. Removing one leader does not destroy the empire, it simply creates space for another to rise. This realization plants a new kind of determination within him. No longer driven only by orders, Rama starts to question everything: the chain of command, the motives behind missions, even the people he once trusted without doubt. He becomes more cautious, more observant. Every detail matters now, every conversation, every decision, every hidden intention. At the same time, the emotional weight of his experience begins to surface in quieter moments. When the noise of the city fades and he is left alone with his thoughts, memories return fast, sharp and unforgiving. Faces of fallen comrades, the intensity of each fight, the moment he was forced to choose between duty and something more personal. These memories do not weaken him, they reshape him. Rama is no longer just reacting to danger, he is preparing for it. As whispers of larger criminal networks begin to emerge, the world around him feels more dangerous than ever. Powerful figures operate behind closed doors, far removed from the violence on the streets. They control everything from the shadows, untouched and unseen. And Rama knows something important now. The real battle is not fought in narrow hallways or dark rooms. It is fought in the spaces where truth is hidden and power is protected. This sets the stage for something bigger, something inevitable. The story that began in a single building starts to expand outward. The stakes are higher, the enemies are smarter, and the cost of failure is far greater. Rama stands at the edge of this new reality, no longer just a participant, but someone who understands the game being played. His journey is no longer about survival alone. It becomes about exposure, about breaking the cycle, about facing forces that cannot be defeated with strength alone. In many ways, this is where the real story begins. Because the raid is not just about one night of violence, it is about what that night reveals: a hidden world, a deeper conflict, and a man who has seen too much to ever turn back. As the city continues to move forward, unaware of the storm building beneath its surface, Rama walks into the unknown, carrying with him the scars, the truth, and the resolve to confront whatever comes next. In the days that follow, Rama finds himself standing at the edge of a reality far more complex than anything he faced inside the building. The violence he survived was only the surfacey, brutal introduction to a deeper, more dangerous world operating quietly beneath the city's routine. Information begins to surface in fragments: names, connections, unfinished operations. Nothing is clear at first, but the pattern is undeniable. The fallen crime lord was not the total, he was part of something larger, something organized with precision and patience. A network that doesn't rely on chaos, but on control. Rama is approached with a choice. Not an order, not a command, a choice: to step away, recover, and return to a safer path, or to go deeper, to enter a world where the lines between ally and enemy disappear completely. He knows what lies ahead if he accepts. No uniforms, no recognition, no certainty of survival, only risk, but also the possibility of uncovering the truth. As he begins to move forward, his identity starts to shift. The disciplined officer must now learn to become something else, someone who can blend into the darkness he once fought against. It requires more than strength. It requires patience, silence, and the ability to see without being seen. Trust becomes a weapon and a weakness. Every interaction carries tension. Every new face could be a threat or an opportunity. Rama learns quickly that, in this world, loyalty is often temporary and power is always in motion. Alliances form and break without warning. Yet, even as he adapts, he refuses to lose himself completely. There is still a line he will not cross, a principle he will not abandon. And that internal conflict becomes his greatest challenge, because the deeper he goes, the harder it becomes to remember where that line once stood. The city reveals itself in layers, hidden meeting places, silent deals, quiet exchanges that shape the balance of power without a single shot being fired. The violence is still there, but now it is controlled, calculated, and far more dangerous. Rama is no longer reacting to chaos. He is navigating strategy, watching, waiting, learning, and slowly, he begins to see the true architects behind everything, the ones who never appear on the battlefield, yet control every move made on it. The journey transforms from survival into infiltration, from action into tension, from instinct into intelligence. But one truth remains constant. The deeper you go into the shadows, the harder it is to come back. As Rama stands at the beginning of this new path, the weight of his decision settles in. There is no clear ending here. No guaranteed victory, only a long road filled with uncertainty, danger, and sacrifice. Yet, he moves forward anyway, because some truths are worth the risk, and some battles cannot be ignored. The story that began with a raid has now evolved into something far greater, silent war beneath the surface of the city, where the next move could change everything. The deeper Rama steps into this hidden world, the more reality begins to shift around him. What once felt solid, his identity, his purpose, his sense of right and wrong, now feels fluid, constantly reshaped by the environment he's forced to survive in. Time passes differently here. Days blend into nights. Conversations carry double meanings. Silence becomes more valuable than words. Rama is no longer just observing, and is becoming part of the system. Every calculated move he makes pulls him further away from the life he once knew. His instincts, once used to protect, are now used to adapt, to blend in, to avoid suspicion. And it works. Slowly, carefully, he earns a place within the layers of this underground network. Not at the top, not yet, but close enough to see how power flows, close enough to understand how decisions are made, and how easily lives can be changed or erased without consequence. But with access comes risk. The people around him are not careless. They are experienced, patient, and always watching. One wrong step, one misplaced word, one moment of hesitation, and everything could collapse. Rama learns to control every expression, every reaction, every breath. He becomes quieter, sharper, more distant. Yet beneath that control, pressure builds. Because living in two worlds comes with a cost. There are moments, rare, fleeting, where the mask slips, when memories return uninvited. The faces from the building, the choices he made, the line he once believed he would never cross. And then comes the realization he already has, not in one single moment, but in small decisions made over time. Compromises, silence, survival. The transformation is not sudden, it is gradual, and that makes it more dangerous, because the more he adapts, the easier it becomes. At the same time, the structure of the organization begins to reveal itself more clearly. It is not built on choice, but on balance. Different factions, different interests, all held together by an unspoken agreement. Maintain order, protect power, eliminate threats. Rama is now seen as an asset. Useful, capable, reliable, which means he is being tested, given tasks that push boundaries, situations designed to measure loyalty, decisions that force him closer to the edge of who he is willing to become. And with each test, the stakes rise, because success brings him deeper in, but failure means exposure, and exposure means death. Yet, even in this darkness, something inside him refuses to disappear, a quiet resistance, a reminder of why he started this journey in the first place. Not for survival, not for power, but for truth. That purpose becomes his answer, the one thing keeping him from drifting too far. Still, the question grows louder with every step. How far can a man go into the darkness before he no longer recognizes himself? Rama doesn't have the answer, not yet. But as the walls close in and the game becomes more dangerous, one thing becomes certain: the next move will not just define his mission, it will define who he is. And in a world where identity is the most fragile thing of all, that may be the greatest risk he has ever taken. The deeper Rama moves, the quieter the world becomes, but the danger grows louder. What once felt like a mission now feels like a slow transformation. The line between acting and becoming has nearly disappeared. He no longer needs to pretend in every moment because parts of this new identity have started to feel real, and that realization unsettles him more than any fight ever could. The organization begins to trust him. Not completely, but enough. He is invited into conversations that were once out of reach. Decisions are made in front of him. Names of powerful figures are spoken without hesitation. The structure he once tried to understand from the outside is now unfolding around him from within. And with that access comes the truth. It is bigger than he imagined. This is not just a network of criminals. It is a system connected to influence, money, and authority at levels far beyond the streets. Deals are made quietly, protected by people who are supposed to uphold the law. The boundary between crime and power has been erased. Rama realizes something chilling. The enemy is not just inside the shadows. It also exists in the light. This knowledge changes everything, because now exposing the truth is no longer just dangerous, it may be impossible. Still, he keeps going. Not because he believes he will win, but because he knows turning back is no longer an option. But then comes the moment that tests him beyond anything before. Simple on the surface, devastating in reality. He is ordered to prove his loyalty in a way that forces him to confront his final boundary. Not a fight for survival, not a strategic move, a choice. One that demands he act against everything he once stood for. Time slows. The noise fades, and for the first time since entering this world, Rama hesitates, not out of fear of death, but out of fear of what he might become if he takes that step. The memories flood back. The man he used to be, the reason he started, the belief that there was still a difference between right and wrong. Now that belief is hanging by a thread. Around him, eyes are watching, waiting, judging. There is no escape from this moment. Whatever decision he makes will define everything that comes after. If he refuses, cover is gone. If he accepts, she may never come back from it. This is the breaking point, not of the mission, but of the man. And in that silence, where everything seems to pause, Rama understands the true cost of this journey. It was never just about risking his life. It was about risking his identity, who he is, what he believes, what he is willing to lose to uncover the truth. As the moment stretches, one thing becomes painfully clear. Some battles are not fought with fists or weapons, but within the soul, and those are the ones that leave the deepest scars. Whatever choice Rama makes next, there will be no turning back, because in a world built on shadows, even the smallest decision can echo forever. The choice and its consequences, a point of no return. The moment does not explode into action, it collapses inward. Silence surrounds Rama like a tightening grip. The eyes on him are not impatient, not emotional, they are cold, observant, calculating. This is not just a test of loyalty, it is a test of identity. And in that moment he decides, not impulsively, not emotionally, but with full awareness of the cost. What Rama does next is subtle but irreversible. To those watching, it is enough. Enough to prove that he belongs. Enough to convince them that whatever past he carried no longer controls him. The tension in the room shifts. Suspicion softens slightly. Acceptance, fragile and conditional, begins to take its place. He has passed, but inside, something fractures, not loudly, not visibly, but deeply, because even if his action was calculated, Even if it served a greater purpose, the weight of it cannot be undone. This is the moment where the mission demands more than courage, it demands sacrifice of self. And Rama feels it. From that point forward, everything changes. He is no longer on the outside trying to get in. He is inside and expected to act like it. The organization responds quickly. His role expands. His responsibilities grow. He is trusted with more sensitive operations movements that influence power across the city. He is no longer just observing the system. He is part of it. And that is where the danger multiplies. Because now the stakes are no longer just about being discovered, they are about becoming too valuable to let go. The deeper his involvement, the harder it becomes to step away without consequences. At the same time, the world around him tightens. Different factions begin to show cracks. Quiet tensions rise between powerful figures, and old alliances weaken. New ambitions begin to surface. The balance that once kept everything stable starts to shift. At the same time, the world around him tightens. Different factions begin to show cracks. Quiet tensions rise between powerful figures, and old alliances weaken. New ambitions begin to surface. The balance that once kept everything stable starts to shift, and Rama is right in the middle of it. He sees what others don't. He hears what others ignore. He understands how fragile the entire system truly is. But knowledge alone is not enough, because every piece of information he gathers brings him closer to a dangerous truth. There is no clean way out of this. Exposing the system could destroy it, but it could also destroy him and anyone connected to him. Remaining inside gives him access but risks losing himself completely. The mission has evolved into a paradox. To succeed, he must go deeper. To survive, he must find a way out. And those two paths are no longer the same. Meanwhile, the pressure inside him builds, not in visible ways but in quiet moments. In the pauses between conversations, in the stillness before sleep, the memory of his choice returns again and again, not as regret alone but as a question. Was it worth it? He doesn't answer, because he knows the truth isn't simple. The world he has entered does not reward purity. It demands compromise, and every compromise leaves a mark. Still, he moves forward. As tensions rise and the system edges closer to instability, Rama prepares for what comes next, not as a soldier following orders, but as a man navigating consequences. The next phase will not be about proving loyalty. It will be about control. Control of information, control of timing, control of the moment when everything must come to light. And when that moment arrives, there will be no room for hesitation, no space for doubt. Only action and the full weight of everything it brings. The city feels different now. Not louder, not quieter, but heavier, like something beneath its surface is about to break. Rama can feel it in every movement around him. Conversations are shorter. Smiles are thinner. Trust what little existed is beginning to fracture. The balance that once held the system together is slipping, and those at the top know it. So they prepare, not for peace but for conflict. Rama, now deeply embedded within the inner circle, stands at the edge of everything he has worked toward. Every risk, every sacrifice, every piece of himself he has given up has led to this moment, the end game. But unlike the chaos inside the building from before, this is different. This is controlled tension, a war that hasn't started yet but is inevitable. Powerful figures begin making moves behind closed doors. Alliances quietly dissolve. Plans are set into motion that will determine who rises and who disappears. No one speaks openly, but everyone understands something is coming, and Rama must decide when to act, because timing is everything. Too early and he exposes himself before the truth can spread. Too late in the system adapts, erasing any chance of bringing it down. He watches, waits, calculates. Every detail matters now. Then the moment arrives. Not with an explosion but with a shift, a betrayal. One faction moves against another, faster than expected. Violence erupts not randomly, but strategically. Targets are chosen. Messages are sent. The silent war becomes visible, the system begins to collapse from within, and Rama knows this is it. No more waiting, no more blending in. Only action. He moves with precision, using everything he has learned. Information becomes his weapon. Every secret he has gathered, every connection he has mapped begins to pull the threads together. The truth starts to surface. Names, operations, corruption at the highest levels. But the system does not fall quietly, it fights back. Hard. Those in power will not surrender control. They adapt quickly, turning the Chaz into a battlefield. Rama becomes a target not just for what he knows, but for what he represents, a threat to everything they've built. The final confrontations are not just physical, they are strategic, emotional, and deeply personal. Old alliances resurface in unexpected ways. Enemies reveal hidden motives. And in the middle of it all, Rama must navigate a path where every decision could cost lives. The tension builds toward one final clash, not just between individuals but between truth and control. In that final moment, Rama stands face to face with the core of the system, the ones who believed they were untouchable. The fight is no longer about survival alone. That final moment, Rama stands face to face with the core of the system, the ones who believed they were untouchable. The fight is no longer about survival alone. It is about exposure, about forcing the truth into the light, no matter the cost. And when it finally happens, it is not clean, it is not perfect, but it is real. The system fractures, not completely destroyed but weakened, exposed, shaken. The illusion of control is broken, and for the first time, the shadows lose their certainty. When the dust settles, the city does not celebrate, it adjusts, because systems like this do not disappear overnight. They evolve. Rama stands once again at the edge, no longer the same man who entered that building long ago. He has seen too much, lost too much, changed too much. But he has also done something that few could. He forced the truth into the open. And sometimes that is enough to begin change. As he walks forward, the future remains uncertain. The war may not be over. The shadows may return in different forms. But one thing has changed forever. Endgame. When everything comes to light, the raid, the city feels different now. Not louder, not quieter, but heavier, like something beneath its surface is about to break. Rama can feel it in every movement around him. Conversations are shorter. Smiles are thinner. Trust, what little existed, is beginning to fracture. The balance that once held the system together is slipping, and those at the top know it. So they prepare, not for peace but for conflict. Rama, now deeply embedded within the inner circle, stands at the edge of everything he has worked toward. Every risk, every sacrifice, every piece of himself he has given up has led to this moment, the end game. But unlike the Chaz inside the building from before, this is different. This is controlled tension. A war that hasn't started yet but is inevitable. Powerful figures begin making moves behind closed doors. Alliances quietly dissolve. Plans are set into motion that will determine who rises and who disappears. No one speaks openly, but everyone understands something is coming, and Rama must decide when to act, because timing is everything. Too early and he exposes himself before the truth can spread. Too late in, the system adapts, erasing any chance of bringing it down. He watches, waits, calculates. Every detail matters now. Then the moment arrives. Not with an explosion but with a shift, a betrayal. One faction moves against another, faster than expected. Violence erupts not randomly, but strategically. Targets are chosen. Messages are sent. The silent war becomes visible. The system begins to collapse from within. And Rama knows this is it. No more waiting, no more blending in. Only action. He moves with precision, using everything he has learned. Information becomes his weapon. Every secret he has gathered, every connection he has mapped begins to pull the threads together. The truth starts to surface. Names, operations, corruption at the highest levels. But the system does not fall quietly. It fights back. Hard. Those in power will not surrender control. They adapt quickly, turning the chase into a battlefield. Rama becomes a target not just for what he knows, but for what he represents, a threat to everything they've built. The final confrontations are not just physical, they are strategic, emotional, and deeply personal. Old alliances resurface in unexpected ways. Enemies reveal hidden motives. And in the middle of it all, Rama must navigate a path where every decision could cost lives. The tension builds toward one final clash, not just between individuals but between truth and control. In that final moment, Rama stands face to face with the core of the system, the ones who believed they were untouchable. The fight is no longer about survival alone. It is about exposure, about forcing the truth into the light, no matter the cost. And when it finally happens, it is not clean, it is not perfect, but it is real. The system fractures, not completely destroyed but weakened, exposed, shaken. The illusion of control is broken, and for the first time, the shadows lose their certainty. When the dust settles, the city does not celebrate, it adjusts, because systems like this do not disappear overnight. They evolve. Rama stands once again at the edge, no longer the same man who entered that building long ago. He has seen too much, lost too much, changed too much. But he has also done something that few could. He forced the truth into the open. And sometimes that is enough to begin change. As he walks forward, the future remains uncertain. The war may not be over. The shadows may return in different forms. But one thing has changed forever. They are no longer invisible, and neither is he. Seasons change, but some things never do. Time moves forward, carrying the city with it, new routines, new faces, new stories layered over the old ones. The events that once shook everything have faded from public memory, reduced to fragments, rumors, and half-truths. For most, it has become history. But for Rama, it is still present, not as chase, not as fear, but as something quieter, a constant awareness. He has stepped away from the center of conflict, but not from its reach. The world he once entered still exists, less visible now, more careful, more refined. It has learned from its mistakes. It has adapted, and so has he. Rama lives with intention. Every action, every decision carries a sense of purpose shaped by everything he has seen. He no longer reacts, he anticipates. He no longer searches for clear answers, she understands that truth often comes in layers. There is a calmness in him now, not the calm of peace, but the calm of understanding. He knows that the fight between control and truth is not something that can be ended once and for all. It is something that reappears in different forms across different times, a cycle that repeats itself in ways most people never notice. And maybe that is why he continues. Not to win completely, but to prevent it from growing unchecked. In quiet ways, he remains connected. Information still reaches him, movements still catch his attention. He watches patterns, listens for shifts, and when necessary, he acts not loudly, not publicly, but effectively, because he has learned something essential. The strongest actions are often the ones no one sees. There are no medals for what he has done, no recognition. No closure in the way most stories promise, only continuation. Yet within that there is meaning, because even if the system still exists, it is no longer invisible. Even if power still moves in the shadows, it is no longer unquestioned. And even if the cycle continues, there are now those who understand it. Rama stands as one of them, a man shaped not just by violence but by truth, not just by survival, but by choice. And though the scars remain both seen and unseen, they no longer define him. They remind him of what he faced, of what he became, of why he continues. As the city breathes under a quiet sky, unaware of the forces that still move beneath it, Rama walks forward, not toward an ending, but along a path that simply continues. No final battle, no perfect resolution, only vigilance and purpose. Because some stories are not meant to end. Final reflection, the story that never truly ends. The raid. Years pass. The city grows. Buildings rise. Old places disappear, replaced by something new. Life continues in its endless rhythm, unaware, unchanged on the surface. To most people, the past is gone, forgotten, irrelevant. But beneath it all the same patterns remain. Rama sees them, not because he searches for them anymore, but because he cannot unsee them. What once required effort to understand is now instinct. A glance, a conversation, a subtle shift in behavior recognizes the signs, the quiet movements of influence, the invisible threads that connect people, power, and control. He no longer stands in the center of conflict, but he is never far from it. There is a difference now in how he lives, not driven by urgency, not consumed by pursuit, but guided by awareness. He chooses when to act. He chooses when to remain still, and sometimes doing nothing is the most strategic move of all, because experience has taught him this. Not every battle needs to be fought immediately. Some need to be understood first. There are others, no new faces, new individuals stepping into roles similar to the one he once carried, some driven by justice, some by ambition, some without fully understanding what they are stepping into. Rama watches them carefully, not as a superior, not as a hero, but as someone who has walked that path and knows where it can lead. And when the moment comes, when someone stands at the same age he once faced, he does something different than what was done for him. He gives them a choice with truth, not orders, not illusions, but clarity, because he knows how dangerous it is to walk into darkness without understanding its depth. In this way, his role evolves again. Not just a fighter, not just a survivor, but a guide, quiet, unseen, yet deeply impactful. Still, the internal question never fully disappears. Was it enough? Did what he did truly matter? The answer does not come in a single moment. It reveals itself slowly through small changes, through disruptions in patterns, through moments where the system hesitates instead of moving freely. That hesitation is proof that something changed, even if it wasn't everything. And maybe that's the reality he has come to accept. Change is rarely absolute, but it is always significant. As time continues forward, Rama becomes less defined by what he went through and more by what he chooses to do with it. The past becomes a foundation, not a weight, a source of clarity, not confusion. He is no longer trying to escape the shadows. He understands them, and because of that, he is no longer controlled by them. In the end, there is no final scene, no clear conclusion where everything is resolved. Only a man walking forward in a world that will always carry both light and darkness, knowing that his role is not to eliminate one or the other, but to maintain the balance between them. The raid was never just about a single mission, a single night, or a single fight. It was about what comes after. And after never really ends. Because as long as there are systems built in silence, as long as power hides behind shadows, and as long as truth struggles to be seen, time no longer moves in straight lines for Rama. It stretches, folds, overlaps. The past is never fully behind him, and the future is never entirely unknown. Everything exists at once: memories, consequences, possibilities, all woven into a single, continuous awareness that shapes every step he takes. The city has transformed. New districts rise where old ones once stood. Glass towers reflect a cleaner, more modern image of progress. Systems appear more organized, more controlled, more legitimate. To the outside world, it feels like evolution, like improvement. But Rama sees deeper. He knows that systems don't disappear, they refine themselves. Where once there was open violence, there is now quiet negotiation. Where once there was fear, there is now influence. Where once power was taken, now it is traded. The shadows have not vanished. They have learned. And so has he. Rama no longer searches for enemies in obvious places. He looks in patterns, in decisions, in timing, in silence. He studies how power moves rather than who holds it. Because faces change, but behavior leaves traces, he has become something rare. A man who understands both sides of the line. He knows how systems are built and how they break. He knows how loyalty forms and how it collapses. He knows how truth is hidden and how it can be revealed. but more importantly understands the cost of each. There are moments where his path intersects with others who remind him of who he once was, young, determined, driven by a clear sense of right and wrong. They see the world in contrasts: justice versus crime, order versus chaos. Rama does not correct them immediately, because he knows that clarity like that has value, but he also knows it won't last untouched. So instead he prepares them, not by shielding them from reality, but by gradually revealing it. He teaches them how to observe, how to question, how to survive without losing everything that defines them. And in doing so, he begins to reshape something larger than himself, not a system of control, but a network of awareness. People who see beyond appearances, people who understand the deeper game, people who act not out of impulse but out of understanding. This becomes his quiet legacy, not destruction, but transformation. Yet, even as this network grows, resistance grows with it, because systems built on control do not tolerate disruption. New figures rise as martyr, more calculated, less visible than those before them. They operate without ego, without the need for recognition. Their strength lies in their invisibility, and they begin to notice the shifts, small at first, then undeniable. Something is changing, patterns are breaking, movements are being interrupted, information is no longer contained, and somewhere within that disruption they begin to sense him, not as a man, but as a force, an influence they cannot fully trace. This is where the conflict evolves again, not into open war, but into a battle of intelligence, strategy against strategy, patience against patience, awareness against control. There are no clear victories here, only advantages, only moments of progress. Rama operates in silence, but his presence carries weight. Every decision he makes ripples outward, affecting people he may never meet, outcomes he may never witness. And yet, he accepts that because he no longer seeks recognition, he seeks impact. There are sacrifices along the way, some expected, others not. People he trains will fall. Plans will fail, truths will be buried again. The cycle will resist change at every step in. But something is different now. The system is no longer untouchable. It can be challenged. It can be disrupted. It can be understood. And that understanding is powered. Years turn into decades. Rama grows older, not weaker, but more refined. His movements are less frequent, but more precise. His role becomes less direct, but more influential. He becomes a presence that is felt rather than seen, a quiet architect of resistance. And eventually, there comes a moment, not dramatic, not marked by conflict, but deeply significant. He steps back, not because the fight is over, but because it no longer depends on him alone. The network continues. The awareness spreads. The cycle, though not broken, is no longer unchallenged. And that is enough. In his final reflection, Rama understands something that once felt impossible. The goal was never to end the darkness completely. It was to ensure that it would never go unquestioned again. As he watches the city alive, evolving, imperfect, he no longer sees it as a battlefield. He sees it as a balance, light and shadow, control and resistance, silence and truth, all existing together, shaping the world in ways most will never notice. And within that balance, his story finds its place, not as a beginning, not as an ending, but as part of something larger, because some stories are not meant to conclude. They are meant to continue through others, through time, through the quiet persistence of those who choose to see the truth. The raid was only the spark. What followed became a legacy. There comes a point where a story stops being about events and starts becoming about influence. Rama's journey has long moved beyond missions, beyond names, beyond even the memory of that building where it all began. What remains is something far more enduring, an imprint on the way the world around him shifts, reacts, and evolves. The city is no longer just a place. It is a system of motion. Information flows like unseen currents. Power moves quietly between individuals who rarely reveal themselves. Decisions are made far from where their consequences are felt. And yet, within all of that complexity, There is now something new, interruption. Small, precise, almost invisible disruptions that prevent the system from becoming absolute again. Those disruptions are not random. They are the result of awareness, the kind of awareness Rama helped create. He is no longer at the center of anything. In fact, many who operate within this evolving landscape have never met him, never heard his name, never known the origin of the shift they are part of, and that is exactly why it works. Because this is no longer about a single man, it is about a principle, a way of seeing, a refusal to accept the surface as truth. Across the city and beyond it, individuals begin to act differently, quietly questioning, quietly observing, quietly resisting when necessary, not loudly enough to draw attention, but effectively enough to create change. The system notices. At first, it adapts as it always has, adjusting, redirecting, compensating. But over time, something becomes clear even to those who control it. The resistance is no longer localized. It is distributed, decentralized, impossible to fully eliminate. And that realization creates something rare within structures of control, impossible to fully eliminate. And that realization creates something rare within structures of control, uncertainty. For the first time, those who once operated with complete confidence begin to hesitate. Their decisions slow. Their movements become more cautious. The certainty that once defined them begins to fracture, not because they are weaker, but because they are no longer unseen. Rama, now distant from the visible layers of this world, senses these shifts without needing to witness them directly. The patterns speak for themselves. The rhythm has changed, and in that change, there is a quiet confirmation. It mattered. Everything he endured, everything he sacrificed, every line he crossed, and every truth he uncovered. It did not end the system, but it changed its nature. And sometimes, that is the only kind of victory that lasts. Still, the world remains what it has always been, a place of balance, not absolutes. For every step forward, there is resistance. For every truth revealed, there is an attempt to conceal another. The cycle continues, but now it continues differently, with tension, with awareness, with opposition. Rama no longer feels the need to intervene in every shift. He understands that influence does not require constant presence. The foundation has been set. The direction has been altered. What remains is continuation, through others, through time, through the quiet persistence of those who choose to see beyond what is shown. In rare moments, he reflects not on what could have been, but on what is. The city, still imperfect. The system, still present. The struggle, still ongoing. And yet, not the same, never the same again. Because somewhere along the way, one man stepped into the darkness not just to fight it, but to understand it. And in doing so, he ensured that it would never again exist without being seen. As the world moves forward, endlessly shifting, endlessly evolving, Rama becomes less a person within the story and more a part of its foundation, an unseen influence. Beyond time, when the story becomes a legacy of thought, the raid, at some point, a story stops belonging to its main character. It begins to live elsewhere, in decisions, in consequences, in the quiet awareness carried by others. Rama no longer moves through the world the way he once did. His presence has thinned, almost dissolved into the baccalogram round of a system that continues to evolve. To most, he is invisible. To many, he is unknown. And yet his impact remains, not as a memory, but as a pattern. The world around him has entered a new phase, not defined by domination or rebellion alone, but by something more subtle, conscious balance. The forces that once operated with unchecked control now move with caution, not because they have lost power, but because they understand they are being observed, questioned, and when necessary, quietly opposed. This is not fear. It is awareness turned into pressure, a pressure that never fully disappears. Across different layers of society, something has shifted permanently. People who once accepted what they saw without question now look deeper. They analyze, they connect, they hesitate before believing. It is not loud. It is not organized. but it is real, and it spreads. Rama sees this not through direct involvement, but through the absence of what used to be common. Fewer blind actions, fewer uncontested moves, more resistance not in chaos, but in precision. The system adapts, as it always has, but now every adaptation meets friction, and friction changes outcomes. Over time, the nature of conflict transforms again. It becomes less about confrontation and more about influence, less about who wins and more about who understands the game at a deeper level. This is where Rama's journey finds its final evolution. He is no longer a participant in the cycle. He is a witness to its transformation. There is a quiet acceptance in that, not resignation but completion, because he realizes something that once felt out of reach. The purpose was never to end the cycle. It was to change how it functions, and that change has already happened. Not perfectly, not completely, but permanently. There are still shadows, there are still systems. There are still moments where power moves in ways most cannot see, but now those moments are not absolute. They are challenged, measured, sometimes even stopped, and that difference is everything. Rama, now standing outside the urgency that once defined him, carries no need to prove anything further. The battles he fought were never about recognition, they were about impact, and that impact continues long after his direct involvement has faded. In rare moments, when he looks out over the city, he does not see a battlefield anymore. He sees motion, complex, imperfect, balanced, a world that will always contain both control and resistance, but now neither exists without the other pushing back. And within that balance, his story settles not as an ending, but as a foundation, because what began as a single operation inside a building grew into a shift in awareness and ultimately became something larger than any individual, a legacy of thought, a way of seeing the world not just as it appears, but as it truly is. And as long as that way of seeing continues to exist in quiet minds, in careful decisions, in unseen resistance, then Rama's journey never really ends. It simply continues through everyone who chooses to look deeper. Final continuum when the story becomes the world itself. The raid, there is a point where even legacy begins to dissolve, not into nothing but into everything. Rama's journey no longer exists as a sequence of events, nor as a memory tied to a single man. It has expanded beyond identity, beyond narrative, beyond time itself. What remains is not a story that can be told from beginning to end, but a presence that exists within the structure of the world. The city continues to evolve, as all cities do. New systems rise with promises of order, efficiency, transparency. On the surface, everything appears more refined, more controlled, more stable, but beneath that surface, the same eternal forces remain: power-seeking influence, truth-seeking expression, control-seeking silence. And now something else exists alongside them: awareness, not as a movement, not as an organization, but as a condition, a quiet state of being that exists within individuals who have learned to see beyond appearances, people who may never know Rama's name, never hear his story, never understand the origin of what they carry, yet they act differently. They pause, they question, they observe before they react. And in those small, almost invisible choices the world shifts. Rama is no longer a guide, no longer a protector, no longer even a shadow within the system. He has become something more abstract, a principle embedded within the cycle itself, a reminder that no system, no matter how powerful, exists without being capable of being understood. And once something is understood, it can be challenged. This is the final transformation, from man to influence to inevitability, because now, the balance he once fought to reveal has become part of the world's natural state. The cycle still exists: control and resistance, shadow and truth, but neither side can fully dominate anymore, not permanently, not completely, not completely. There will always be attempts. There will always be moments where power gathers, where silence spreads, where truth is pushed into the baccalogram rounds, but there will also always be interruption. A thought, a doubt, a question that refuses to disappear, and that is where the story lives now. Not in action, not in conflict, but in awareness. Years become decades. Decades become something less measurable. Generations rise without knowledge of the origins of this shift, yet they inherit its effect. The world becomes more complex, but also more conscious of its own complexity. Nothing is perfect. Nothing is resolved, but everything is different. And that difference is enough, because the goal was never perfection. It was possibility, the possibility that no system could ever again operate without being seen, the possibility that even in the deepest shadow, there would always be a presence, a quiet, patient, aware, ready to question what exists. Rama's story does not end because it no longer belongs to time. It belongs to the structure of awareness itself. And as long as there are minds willing to look beyond what is shown, as long as there are moments where silence is broken by understanding, as long as truth, no matter how small, continues to surface, then the story continues. Not as a legend, not as history, but as reality. Because in the end, the raid was never just about entering a building, it was about opening a way of seeing. And once that way is opened, it can never be closed again. So there is no final chapter, no last scene, only an ongoing existence where the question remains alive in every moment. What lies beneath what we seek? And somewhere within that question, the story lives on. This point, there isn't really a next in the traditional sense. The story you've been building from the raid has already gone far beyond the original film into philosophy, legacy, and almost an abstract idea of awareness and control. If I keep extending it in the same direction, it risks becoming repetitive rather than deeper. So instead of stretching it endlessly, here are a few stronger directions we can take next. You choose. 1. Prequel story, before the raid. Go back to Rama's early life, his training, how he entered the police force. The first time he faced real violence. This will feel fresh and grounded again. 2. Direct sequel style, more action. Continue like a real movie. New crime empire rises, Rama forced back into combat, bigger fights, betrayals, and missions more like the Raid 3 vibed. 3. Dark psychological version, focus on Rama's trauma, guilt, and identity crisis. Reality's memory, more emotional, intense, and deep. 4. Turn this into full movie script. We can convert everything into scene by scene dialogue, use cinematic storytelling like a real Hollywood script. 5. New character story, same world, shift focus, new protagonist. Rama becomes legend, baccalogram round figure, same universe, new perspective expands the world. Water runs. Rama splashes his face, looks into the mirror. For a brief moment, he doesn't recognize himself. Next, street, morning, the city awakens. People move normally. Vendors open stalls. Motorbikes pass. Life continues. Rama walks through it all like a ghost. Hint. Coffee stall, morning. Rama sits alone. A man, Fortis, plain clothes, observant, sits across from him. Silence. Then, man, you disappeared. Rama, I finished what I was sent to do. The man studies him. Man, no, you survived something you weren't supposed to. Beat. Man, can't it? We have a problem. Rama doesn't react. Kinked. Abandoned building, day, dim light. Just